am.
Yes. And you live now in Sydney. And how did you get to this wonderful city?
Well, I was actually born in Sydney at Royal North Shore Hospital, but however I grew up in Manly, which is the northern beaches of Sydney. I moved out and into the inner west when I was around 23, and I bought this property, which is more sort of city area, downtown Sydney, when I was 28. So underwent a renovation.
Yeah, let me just show a little bit of it, because it's really so stunning. It's really beautiful, and you have this lovely, see, I'm turning around, and this wonderful, and we're going to come back to Danny, and this is a lovely, and now it functions as an Airbnb, is that correct?
Yes.
Right.
So, yes, I bought the property in mid-2010. I underwent a reno in mid-2013. Mm-hmm. And then there were actually Americans living here permanently, just via a normal lease, for around 2.5, 3 years. And they moved out April this year. I enlisted a Airbnb specialist for a couple of months, and went, this isn't really working out. I think I'm just going to do this myself. So yes, I styled it myself, and it's been running since the 1st of September of 2017, and I've absolutely loved the experience. It's been booked virtually every night, so it's around 95-98% occupancy. And I'm just really enjoying the whole process, meeting new people from all sorts of backgrounds and cultures. And my plan is to, scale, like sort of do more of these and operate it more like a business, because I'm really enjoying just the whole process.
Now, with the design here, was this an old building that you had to basically gut? Or was it sort of fixed out a little bit when you bought the place?
Okay, so the exposed beams, it was actually originally a brewery, and then it was redeveloped in 2000 to residential spaces. There's 52 buildings in the block, so yeah, it was very different to how you see it. I'm happy to send you before and after photos if you like, but it was nothing like this. It was mustard tiles all throughout the bathroom. The bedroom didn't even exist. The study didn't even exist. It was literally just the kitchen was actually where the bedroom was, along that wall, and it was literally just carpeted throughout. That courtyard was an eyesore. So it was very different to how it is now. Certainly wouldn't have been operating as a very good Airbnb if I left it in the state it was. But yeah.
So just a couple questions about you. What do you like about living in Sydney? In other words, what's the Sydney vibe? I mean, and Louise and I have some sense of what it is, just a little bit. But what is the Sydney vibe? How would Sydney be described for people who know nothing about Australia or Sydney?
Well, I think there's a misconception that we sort of ride via kangaroos, and everything's all about the outback, and that's certainly an element that's more Northern Territory and even regional New South Wales. But in terms of Sydney itself, it's certainly changed a lot since the Olympics that we had here in 2000. That really put us on the map, and people started to see us as an international city. It's the diversity and it's become very multicultural, which is fantastic, and it's so vast as well. There's so many cultures living in the one place, so that's so brilliant for food and design and across all areas, and it's just a wonderful place to be. Obviously we've got beautiful beaches and the harbour. It's Sydney is really what you make it. There's just an abundance of a plethora of entertainment and whatnot around. So,
and in terms of Chippendale as a neighborhood, what do you like about it? I know you're not quite living here now, or are you?
No, I'm living actually in a semi-similar neighbourhood called Annandale, which is less than 10 minutes away from here. That's more inner west though. Chippendale I love because it was funny when I bought the property, and even a few years prior, the area was a bit of a no-go zone. People, Redfern, Chippendale, Darlington, it was almost the area to avoid. But now it's the place to be. I love how the proximity, I love how it's very, eclectic and quite eccentric, and I love how leafy it is, and there's a real sense of community as well. Beautiful retail outlets and cafes, and mainly just just the sense of community is really quite lovely.
And are you a designer or what?
Soon to be a budding designer. I actually I started out studying interior design, thinking I wanted to go into more residential design. But as my studies are progressing, I actually really enjoy commercial, because it's I think it's a little bit more creative, I think. But in saying that, I'm more of a property investor before designer, funnily enough. So I'm very much about the numbers, and I like to merge the two, because I'm I guess a capitalist hippie, if you will.
Capitalist hippie.
Yeah. So I'm a Pisces, so I'm always I'm those two fish are like always in battle with each other. No, but I do love property investing, and then I love to merge that with design as well. So it's both it's very very systematic and practical, but then you have this real artistic element as well, and styling is really everything. I just finished a property actually about an hour away from here that was a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom dive, really, slum, and it's now this beautiful 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom house, and I rent that out room by room. So it's designs everything. If it wasn't well designed, then people wouldn't want to go anywhere near it. So.
Wow. And then just one question, because my sister's from San Francisco,
Yeah.
and San Francisco has an affordable housing crisis.
Yes.
Is that happening here in Sydney? Are there still places where ordinary people,
Yes.
working people, middle class, can find homes?
We've had it's exponential growth in the last, particularly the last 4 or so years. Prices have become, people say the prices have become ridiculous, but in saying that, we were quite dormant for quite some time. So it's just played catch up for the last sort of 10 or so years. Mm-hmm. And obviously what's happening in one suburb isn't necessarily happening in the other. Mm-hmm. Sydney and Melbourne is starting to sort of peter out a little, thankfully. But there is certainly, I think what's happening is, people have to go out further. So rather than, living very close to the CBD, it's now a matter of there are sub-CBDs that have been created, and then communities being set up around that. So there's an area called around Gosford area, which used to be, I don't know if it was regional, but it was certainly, hours out of Sydney. But now that we're actually merging, it used to be Sydney was Sydney, and then it's Great Western Sydney and then now it's even funneling out further to Gosford and places like that. So Gosford's now included as Sydney. So I think we're just going to keep on
moving out.
Yeah, spreading out.
And in the United States, we call it metropolitan area, standard metropolitan area.
Sure.
Or some such concept, which I've now forgotten. But how many people actually live in what would be considered the metropolitan area in Sydney? Do you have any idea?
I'm actually not certain of that. I could...
Oh, don't worry about it.
Australian Bureau of Statistics would answer that
question
of course. Very quickly,
but it's just very interesting, because when you see dynamic growth and the spread of growth, it's really interesting, how that changes the city or not.
Absolutely. And I think, we're running out of land, so we're building up. So there used to be the Great Australian Dream was a 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 2-garage house on a huge backyard. What we're doing now is, but a lot of research has actually shown that these mansions, it's actually a waste of space. Mm-hmm. So if you look at places like Tokyo and look at how they, this place would be, even though this is 60 square metres, and something like, it's 59 square metres actually to be exact, and outside is maybe 13 square metres or something. So internally it's quite small. But if you compare that to places like Tokyo, like Japan, this is almost huge, So it's all relative. And a lot of people now, that have the big backyards, say out west, and the larger properties, are chopping their backyards up and creating what we call a granny flat, which is a secondary dwelling. I'm in the process of creating that, and yes, it's part of the affordable housing solution.
Yes.
Because a lot of people are actually, families and things like that, they want to obviously, be close to mum and dad and raise a family. And the solution to that is, create the main dwelling, live in the main dwelling as usual, but then create the secondary dwelling for maybe their teenagers or, the grandparents.
Well, that sounds like an interesting solution on a lot of different levels. So anyway, what do you think are the misconceptions? I know you said that part of the misconception is that everybody thinks of Australians as...
I think people think we're a little bit backward. I think perhaps people think that... well, I'm not really sure. I think people are quite surprised. I meet a lot of people who, have this misconception of Australia and Sydney, and then they come out here and no, we actually have some of the best coffee in the world, for example.
Well, that is true.
Yes.
And unbelievably good theatre and dance.
Absolutely.
And the galleries here, I know Melbourne is always identified as the...
Oh, I love Melbourne.
Yeah. But I have to say, some of your galleries here are kicking. I mean, they're amazing.
They are. They really are. We're almost becoming... a little bit Melbourneized in a way, which I think is a great thing. I'm not sure if you're aware of these lockout laws which have taken place in Sydney. So
Oops, I guess that's...
Oh, the cab.
The cab. Okay, I want to thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.